Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. So today I want to talk about, well, how do you prepare for everything happening at once? Because in a lot of ways, and I know a lot of you have said this and a lot of you think this, that's what it feels like what's going on. Everything is happening at once. And how do you prepare for that? It's a conversation my wife and I have had a few times, and I don't know that I have all the answers, but I'm hoping that it's a conversation that we can have to hopefully give you some ideas and encourage you, because it is very overwhelming and it can almost seem like there's no hope, right? There's all these things happening right now in our world, and it almost seems like there's just no way you can actually be prepared for everything that's happening. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Before I get started, I want to mention if you are in the market for a Berkey water system, and Berkeys, they are the Cadillac of water filtration, of home water filtration systems, and you're probably all familiar with them, the big stainless steel gravity drip water filters. There is a link in the description below that you can purchase them directly from Berkey. That way you know that they are authentic and that the filters are authentic. There are problems sometimes with people purchasing them on sites other than Berkey because some people, they're fakes, and they put fake cheap Chinese filters and things like that in them. But if you're in the market for one of those, again, down in the description below, there is a link that you can go and purchase one of those if you're in the market. All right. So again, this is a conversation my wife and I have every once in a while. And she has said it before, that sometimes it's just almost overwhelming when you think of all the stuff that's going on. I think back, and some of you guys and gals that are more seasoned preppers and homesteaders, you know what I'm talking about, the TV show Doomsday Preppers. And I won't go into how much, there was some ridiculousness there of that show. But the point that I'm trying to make is on every episode, they would showcase particular preppers and show all their stuff and their plans and everything. And in the beginning, they would always say, or have that particular person tell what they were prepping for. Oh, they were prepping for an economic collapse. They were prepping for the Yellowstone caldera to blow. They were prepping for an EMP. They were prepping for a nuclear war. And it gave the idea that prepping is something that if you have a particular fear, if there's something that you're afraid might happen, then you better be prepared for that. Well, what happens if other things happen? What happens if the one thing that you're so highly focused on preparing for never happens, but something else does? Or what's even worse, if you're preparing for one singular event and everything happens, and not just that one thing that you're thinking of. And that is almost what it seems like is happening right now. We've gone through a global health crisis that, caused all this destruction, at least to the economy and to individuals' lives because of shutdowns and that sort. We've had damage to our supply chain. We've had all these political problems and threats and rumors of war. The economy just seems to be in a slow motion downward spiral. And, we've got cyber attacks and infrastructure attacks and on and on and on that keeps going on. We've got the grand solar minimum. There's, even worse than the grand solar minimum, something that I've not really talked a whole lot about on this channel. There's a growing number of scientists that believe we are on the verge of a major solar or climatic shift and change. Whether or not you believe that or not, I'm just saying that there's a lot of scientists that believe that we're on the verge of a major solar flare, pole shifting, the weakening electromagnetic field here on the earth. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Increased crime rates, the complete destruction of decency and morality in America. I mean, I could go on and on, right? You know, I could make an entire video probably of just listing all the things that are going on that would cause you to want to become more prepared. So, how do you do it? Well, number one, I always tell people, when you're working on your preparedness plan, when you're working on what things that you need to do, what are the steps that you need to do in your life to be prepared, how you should do it is you should just prepare for a worst case scenario on all fronts, and set the bar fairly high, not so high that it's absolutely out of the realm of possibility for you. So when I say that, I mean, don't sit there and say, well, my preparedness plan is to have built a $50 million, bomb-proof bunker filled with another $50 million worth of food and equipment. For most people, there's no possibility of you ever attaining that. But having 3 years worth of food and supplies, moving to a place that you can live more self-sufficient, on a regular basis, training and obtaining the skills needed to live a self-sufficient life, to learn the old traditional skills of how to garden, how to cut a tree down and collect firewood, or to build something without modern conveniences. This is something that most people can attain. These are goals that most people can attain. And so I've always believed that the best way to prepare is to prepare for the worst. Just prepare for the worst and on every front. And here we are now, living in a time that it seems like just about that the worst on every front is actually happening. And so I think that's the first thing to do. The obvious are just the basics of prepping. Food, have enough food on hand. Medical, water source, have your water source nailed down, the ability to purify and filter that water. Tools and the things that you need to just go about your daily life. You need to acquire, whether it's tools in the kitchen, and when I say tools, I include that. I'm not talking about just hammers and wrenches and pliers. I'm talking about flour mills and pressure cookers and things like that you can use to get yourself more and closer to a life of self-sufficiency, a life of independence where you're not dependent upon some type of system. This, I feel, and I believe, is the best steps to make when it comes to being prepared for everything that goes on. I also, as many of you know, I'm really big on your location. Kind of like the rule of thumb in real estate: location, location, location. It's the same way with prepping. If you're living in a high-rise apartment in Chicago, or you're living in a downtown East St. Louis or something like that, it's probably not the most safe, secure place to live. It's not a place that you can be self-sufficient. You're going to find yourself in a truly bad situation, eventually either being harmed or forced to kind of give in to whatever the authorities say and do around you, because you can't take care of yourself in a situation like that. And I know that those are extreme examples that I'm giving, but I think you all know what I mean. So getting yourself to a place where you can be more self-sufficient, I believe, is very important. I understand, and I get a lot of hate mail or comments when I talk about this, because I understand that some of you just say you can't do it. And if that's true, I am not here to judge you. I am saying, though, that facts are facts, truths are truths. You can be more self-sufficient, self-sustaining, independent, dependent upon your own blood, sweat, and tears, on your own land where you can take care of yourself and your family than you can in the middle of a city surrounded by concrete and steel. I mean, that's just common sense, right? So even though it may not be something you feel you can do, I don't think it's wrong to say that you can be better off from a preparedness and survival standpoint by living in a location where you can be truly self-sufficient. The other things that you need to do, and this may not have been always something that preppers think about, because what we're faced with now, the current SHTF that we're faced with, where it seems like everything is falling apart, and not just everything falling apart, but how the culture of America has changed. Where people are being canceled and they're being fired and they're being kicked off of internet platforms, or they're even to the extent of not even being able to take out business loans or do business or whatever it is because of their political beliefs or because of their religious beliefs. This kind of world that we live in now is also forcing us to, I believe, reevaluate our future plans. If your plans for employment include something that you believe could lead you into a place that you may no longer have that employment because of the world that we live in, or that you would have to choose to deny your belief system to carry on that job and to give up certain freedoms to have that job, then maybe you need to find a different line of work. Or maybe the line of work that you work in or that you desire to work in just isn't going to be available. With the increase in technology and robotics and artificial intelligence and all this Green New Deal stuff that's going on, in 5 to 10 years, the types of jobs available could be drastically different than they are right now. And so that's also something to think about, where your income might come from. If your income, if your retirement or some of your income comes from a lot on the stock market, the way things are going, even though right now you could make money on the stock market, in 5 years and in 10 years, that may not be the case, the way the economy and the dollar and stuff are becoming more and more fragile. So if your long-term plans are making money and your long-term retirement plans are making money off of the stock market and investments, that may not be a very sustainable plan for you in the future. We don't know. So along with the basics of prepping food and prepping, medical supplies and maybe even buying a piece of land and that kind of stuff, we also need to be thinking about this other stuff because the world that we live in now and that it looks like we're going to be living in over the next 5 to 10 years, I believe it's going to be very different. So I think that's something to strongly consider in your life. When it comes to prepping for everything, another thing to consider, aside from just food and land and your job, is the fact that, and this is touching again on belief systems, whether it's your political or religious beliefs, it could come a day where it is actually physically dangerous. There is a physical, violent threat to you by having those beliefs. As much as 5, 10, and 20 years ago, most people would have laughed in America. The thought that it would become a danger for some people to be a conservative, it would be a danger for you to be a patriotic person, it would be a danger for you to believe in limited government, it would be a danger for you to believe in God and the Bible in a very true, real, pure sense. And believe that right is right and wrong is wrong, and man is man and woman is woman, and all these kinds of things, or to raise your children that way, or to teach them at home. These are things that for decades in America has just been a given, that it's okay for some people to believe that way, even if others don't agree with it. It's always been believed that you have the freedom to believe as you will here in America. Those days are most likely coming to an end very shortly, as we are starting to see changes all around us. And it's happening faster in some areas than others, of course, but it's definitely something to think about. It's definitely something to prepare. How are you going to raise your children? If you don't homeschool them now because of maybe you both parents work, or you're a single parent that works, are you still willing to send your children to public schools, considering the things that are being taught to them today, and it's only going to get worse, it's only going to get more and more progressive? At what point do you have to pull the plug and make some kind of massive sacrifice in your life and teach your children at home? I believe this is all part of preparedness, because what does it do us any good to have the ultimate amount of, canned, freeze-dried food in the closet, and ammunition, and the best, first aid kit and bug out bags you can have, if you're still sending your children into the den of thieves and wolves only to be devoured by them? And you've basically lost your children, lost your family, lost their soul because you've sent them in. I think, again, that this is all part of prepping, and the world that we live in is drastically changing. And it does seem like that we are being attacked on all fronts. It does seem like that SHTF, dangers, apocalyptic crashes, whatever terms you want to use, it does seem like they're happening all the time. Sometimes not as dramatic as what we might see in a TV show or movie, but they are happening, especially if you have a keen eye and are aware of what's going on. And because of that, it seems very overwhelming. I was reading an article actually just this morning on the increased crime across America in many cities, and even cities that in just a few years ago were considered very low crime rate area. Crime pretty much across the board everywhere has increased, and it's increased drastically. Some cities have seen triple plus digit increases, 300% and 400% increases of crime, violent crime, just in the last 12 to 18 months. And it doesn't appear that there's going to be any, ending of this in sight, because there's such a push for defunding the police and not supporting law enforcement. So the police, well, they're leaving. There's been a massive influx, or I guess exit is the right word, of police officers from law enforcement work. Anyone in the last 12, 18 months that's capable of retiring has done so. So all the old police officers pretty much are gone. Younger police officers that are capable of shifting gears to a different line of work are doing so. In some cities, they've even reduced the amount of calls or the types of calls that they will even go on, because they're losing police officers so fast and no one's signing up. So here's another thing. If your goal for yourself or maybe your children is to become a police officer, you might need to rethink those goals, because probably not a good time to do that. We live in a very unstable country right now. The environment, and I'm not talking about environment like nature and rain. I'm talking about the environment as a whole, the political environment, the social environment, the economic environment right now in the United States is pretty unstable. And because of that, I believe that we should shift and refocus our prepping plans, and that it's not like it was back in the old days of prepping, where you just plan to have a bug out location and a cool bug out bag filled with cool gear and the ability to get from point A to point B and go out and live in the wild and survive for a while until it all blows over, or go down in some hole until all the radiation finally cooks off. That most likely is not what's going to help us right now, because it's a very different type of apocalyptic SHTF. And I think it's catching a lot of people off guard, including preppers. And the ones that it's not catching off guard so much, it's wearing us down because it's so overwhelming. And we get to the point that we think there's so many things going on that there's no possible way that we can actually prepare for this. And I don't want you to get to that point. I don't want you to think that way, because we can prepare for this, because we prepare for one thing in the same way we prepare for all things. We're just getting our lives in order for a worst case scenario. And if you do that, then you're ready for whatever happens, instead of planning on just a singular or maybe two events happening. Just plan for everything. Plan for the worst, and then you've got things kind of under control. There's no way to prepare for everything. There's no way to be 100% prepared to ride it out. But know that every step you move towards preparedness, you're increasing your odds of survivability overall, and especially more than anyone else. Preparedness is just a form of insurance. That's all it is. When you buy automotive insurance, it doesn't mean that you'll never have a wreck again. When you buy automotive insurance, it doesn't mean that if you have a wreck, they will pay for absolutely all damages. Sometimes you do have out-of-pocket problems. And it's the same way with prepping. It doesn't assure that you'll never go through anything, and it doesn't assure that if you go through things, it'll be a smooth ride all the way. What it does give you assurance on is that your ability and the likelihood for you to get through a rough spot, whether short-term or long-term, is greatly increased over the average person because you took the time, energy, and money to simply prepare for a bad time. And that's what we do. So don't get down. Just keep doing what you do. Keep preparing every day, little by little. And then when you find out that you actually need to use those tools and skills and supplies, you'll be ready for it. All right, folks. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.